Yeah, no. Do you guys realize how often those two words come up in our lives, yes and no, and just how often we're not exactly sure which one of those words to apply at that moment? We've taught a class that's probably rooted in my Midwestern roots. I'm from St. Louis, Missouri. You weren't so happy with me all the last 4 days, were you guys here in Chicago? And we were always taught in the Midwest that nice wins the day and that yes wins the day. Most of us who got into this business in the first place did so because we like when people say yes to us. We like when people are nice to us. And we want to return that. And we believe that the best way to get a hug is to have given one first. Can't get a hug unless you give one. That was always, as far as I'm concerned, the basis of hospitality. We've taught a class at Union Square Hospitality Group for years, which is actually entitled Finding the Yes. In every situation, there is a yes that can be found. It always troubled me and always confused me when I would hire people, going all the way back to the very first year that I got into business, 1985 with the Union Square Cafe, that I would have to convince people on our team to just say yes. And then I learned that for some people, no as a default is much easier. And the reason is that yes is a commitment. The minute you say yes, you are committing to a future of delivery. The minute you say no, you're actually copping out on a future commitment. So it was a really easy thing for me to understand, but a less easy thing for me to teach. Like, chef, why wouldn't you substitute mashed potatoes for a vegetable? Why not just say yes? Or when Mr. Sean, the 80-something-year-old former editor of the New Yorker, comes in for lunch, now that he's over at Ferris Rocheroux, and he only wants to eat cereal for lunch, why wouldn't you say, yes, we will run across the street and get your favorite cereal at the bodega? That was such an easy yes to do. Or, for example, why wouldn't you transfer a drink from the bar, which no restaurants were doing in 1985 for some silly reason? Or why wouldn't you seat me before the rest of my party's complete? Just say yes. Yes has always been the mantra of hospitality. As a matter of fact, in addition to teaching people to find the yes, we've also gone out of our way to try to teach people to create the yes. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, let's say the question wasn't even asked. Let's say, and I'll remember this to the rest of my days, a couple walks into Union Square Cafe at lunchtime. I'm on the front door. It is very, very clear that they have just been having a terrible fight. And my job is, in the next hour and a half, I got to make these people feel better than they came in. Not so hard. The fight, it turns out, was that the parking space that husband found was a block and a half away from the restaurant, way too far away for a walk. The second part of the fight was that they had run out of quarters for the meter. Now, this is way before we had, you know, put your credit card in. So I go, I'm gonna create a yes even when there wasn't a yes. And I said, we've got extra quarters here at the restaurant. Why don't we get you two seated? Well, we're already late for the reservation. You've probably given it away. No, we actually have your table still. Why don't you let me get you seated and I'll go put quarters in your machine for you. I want to find the yes. I want to create the yes. They finally agree to take their table. The fuming starts to subside just a little bit. I walk around the corner. The car is exactly where it was supposed to be. No ticket, I could see that from a distance, but as I got closer and closer to the car, I see that someone has bashed in their window and stolen the radio. Now, how am I going to create a yes out of this one? And make sure they leave a little bit happier. May we call the police for you, please? May we find a new company to install your radio for you, please? You get the idea. Sometimes it's not finding the yes, it's actually creating the yes. Here's another example of that. More modern times, internet, social media, we're listening carefully. This goes back about 5 years ago, and we pick up that somebody is ecstatic. This is all a good story, guys. They're ecstatic that they have come to New York, and what a lot of people have done with my book, Setting the Table, is they road test it to see if it's real. And they come in and they try to play a game of gotcha. See, you guys aren't so good after all. Well, just for the record, we never said in Setting the Table we're that good. We said these are our ideals, and here's all the times we've actually screwed up. So people kind of like to see that happen. So these people wrote, we managed to get to every single Union Square Hospitality Group restaurant, except that when we went to Shake Shack, it closed too early, and so we're missing it. But, and this was one of these like 3-tweet things, the good news is we're going to get to have that one last Shack burger at JFK. The next tweet, God damn it, Delta, you moved our flight from Terminal 4 to Terminal 2. How do we create a yes right now? Well, by listening, the team at Shake Shack got in touch with these people and said, what time is your flight? We would love to deliver Shack burgers from Terminal 4 over to Terminal 2 for you. Now, that was not finding a yes, that was creating a yes. Pretty powerful stuff, right? And of course, that led to its own several tweets thereafter. I want to also talk to you about how saying yes can be incredibly dangerous. And this is really where I want to go with my talk today. Because what I've learned is that there's an incredible tension between yes and no. And that sometimes those of us who are naturally wired to find the yes, to create the yes, actually do the wrong thing by saying yes. And no is often a much, much better option. I think a lot of people who are completely fascinated by the word yes suck at saying the word no. We don't know how to do it. We don't know how to do it quickly enough. We don't know how to do it cleanly enough. And we don't know why it is often the much more appropriate answer. I'll tell you the times I've gotten in trouble with a yes. First one goes back to the first month I was a restaurateur. Couldn't find the chef, or I came to learn his girlfriend, the sous chef, anywhere in the restaurant. I opened every closet, every door, every office, nowhere, and everyone said, oh, I just saw them. Finally, of course, you always find something in the last place you look. It was in the walk-in refrigerator, right by the oysters, and go figure. Yeah, they had a shucking knife down there too. And they were making out. Well, I now learned that we had a thing. I called my dad back in St. Louis and I said, what do I do? And my dad gave me some of the most empty advice I think he ever gave me in my life. And he said, you know, generally if you hire really nice people, you got two choices. They're working all these hours together. They're either going to fight or they're going to fall in love. He said, as far as I'm concerned, that's the better option. Wasn't. Because the next day, the two of them, and we had opened on October 21st. The next day was November the something or other, and hey, can we take Thanksgiving weekend off? We're really not that busy yet. And I said, yes. They took off Thanksgiving. In fact, we had not been very busy. We were not even using half of Union Square Cafe's seats at that point. I said yes to them. They went off to Pepper Pike, Ohio, so the parents could meet the son, the chef. And this guy decides you better put your sport coat, you better put your kitchen whites on top of your sport coat, because the entire kitchen was coming to its knees, because for some reason, New Yorkers love to dine out the Friday after Thanksgiving because they're sick of their little apartments and their family, and they've got to get out of the house. And we used to have something called Romanco. No one in this room is even old enough to remember that, but it was the first point of sale system, and this thing was spitting out tickets, like a tsunami. And I put the kitchen whites on. It was the worst night of service we've ever had. And as a matter of fact, not having eaten anything before that, because I wasn't expecting to be in the kitchen expediting, I get a little bit woozy. And that was the night, thanks to my saying yes when I should have said no, that a server comes into the kitchen and they say, table 38 is really upset that we won't serve them an extra cocktail. And I said, cut them off, which is just a really helpful thing to tell a server. Like, server comes back in 1 minute later. Danny, they want to see you. And I go, okay. So I walk into the dining room, and the guy is walking around the dining room with his tie tied around his forehead and a cocktail in his hand, saying, you can't cut me off. And I said, you're damn right I can. And he said, and then I said, as a matter of fact, I want you to pay right now. And he said, you can't make me pay. And I said, yes, I can. And at that point, we go chest to chest through the dining room. Little do I know that we are being reviewed by the Daily News at that moment, watching the whole thing. The guy slugs me in the face, and Mr. Hospitality slugs him back in the face. You're not going to like the next part, but here we are on the Steppenwolf stage, so I can say anything I want to. At this point, we're at the front door, and this is the first time I've ever punched anyone in the face in my life. And the handle of the door of the vestibule is on the vestibule side. All I have is a push plate. He opens the door, slams my head into the door jamb, and I didn't have any choice to do what some of you might have done. He had two friends with him, by the way. They were like those monkeys in The Wizard of Oz. They were just kind of going like this. And I just wound up, and I did a Pete Gogolak as hard as I possibly could, right where it counted. Pete Gogolak was a kicker, by the way. He ended up on the sidewalk, and I ended up realizing that I had to learn how to say no a lot better. I really did. I have said yes in some of the most dangerous situations you can imagine. Most of the worst yeses that should have been no's have to do with people. Saying yes to someone who's applying for a job on your team when your gut knows they should not be on your team. We've all done that. And I would say that we're in a place right now with virtually no unemployment where the opportunity to say yes when you should say no is probably greater than ever. And I would say this is a moment for all of us, no matter where you work, no matter what industry you're in, while everybody else is settling because they need to fill that position, this is the time when you can most distinguish yourself by being pickier than ever and saying no on behalf of your team, because your team deserves to work with people who can bring their team up. The minute you know you're settling, you know you're settling. Stop it. That's an important one. So the who is probably the biggest time that I've regretted saying yes. And while we're on that topic, have you ever given a raise to someone because it was too hard to say no? And you know that they did not deserve a promotion. You know that they are not the best at what they do and the best at who they are for your culture. Have you ever taken in a business partner because it was convenient? You two are looking at each other. Are you partners? Have you ever taken in a business partner because the money was there? Have you ever done a deal with a developer because the money was there? And your gut knew better from the word go. It only gets harder. It's going to lead to a no ultimately, so why not just do it in the first place? Why not do it quickly? And why not learn to do it in a way that actually leaves the other person respecting you even more as a result? Imagine next time you do get offered, because I've made these mistakes many, many times. You get offered a deal. The developer wants you because of your past success. You're a chef. You've been on TV. Oh my gosh, look what I could do for that casino. They only had my name on the banner. Okay? Ask yourself, would you do that deal if you had to pay 100% of it yourself? Or am I just doing it as a compromise, potentially to my own values, because my values may not be aligned with that developer? Am I saying yes because as a hospitalitarian, I'm really, really good at accommodating people? I'm going to share a story with you. We had a deal in another city to do one of our restaurants, and we had to cancel it. And by the time we canceled it, 2 years of saying yes and trying to find the yes had gone by. 2 entire years. We tried to make something work physically that wasn't going to work. It didn't ever feel quite right to us. We tried to move it. Engineering-wise, that was hard. We could have figured out that no was the right answer right off the bat. Instead, 2 years went by. 2 years of travel and dollars and people's time, including the developer, were completely squandered. And getting out of that deal 2 years later was an incredibly embarrassing and costly mistake. And it didn't have to happen. And it was all because the wiring, which works so well, of saying yes in hospitality, wasn't appropriately programmed to understand that yes is not always the right answer. It just isn't. I have another example of that when I should have said no. Maialino, our Italian restaurant, I was so proud to get a call one day from a guy named, I still can't quite pronounce his first name, Erminingildo Zegna. Wouldn't you be proud to get a call? Danny, I'm introducing my silk line in New York City. I want to bring all of my best customers to have dinner at Maialino. I said, that's awesome. He's introducing his line. He's going to bring the CEO of every major company you can imagine. We have seating for 20 people in the private dining room. Yes. 3 o'clock that afternoon, the PR people call. Guess what? It's going to be 22 people. We can do it. 24 people. We don't have enough chairs. But yes, let's get 2 chairs from upstairs, even though they don't match. 26 people. Yes, but it's going to be really crowded. 32 people showed up for dinner because we kept finding the yes. Everybody's sitting around the table as if they were in a straitjacket. The servers come in. I have no idea how they navigated to get the family-style meal in front of everybody at the table, but I will never forget the slow-motion view that I saw when one of the servers was clearing a bread basket in order to make room for the pasta course, and one of the guests, unbeknownst to any of us, had put a cruet of olive oil in the bread basket, and in slow motion, I see the olive oil pouring down the back of the woman's suede dress. 2 people to my right. She didn't even know it. I had that amazing integrity moment, which is doing the right thing even when no one's looking, doing the right thing even when it's not necessarily in your own self-interest. And then I realized this is a woman who owns an art gallery. I remembered my mom had bought a piece of art from her, and I said, this is going to get back to my mom somehow. I better do this the right way. So I leaned over, because there was one person between us, and I said, we just spilled on you. I just bought that dress yesterday, Calvin Klein. You have no idea. my heart starts pounding almost as much as it did before joining the stage today. And the next thing I did was I said yes too many times, but we said it and we are now committed. What are we going to do? Well, obviously, we had to write a great next chapter. Called over the general manager. She managed to find out, I have no idea to this day, how to get in touch with the general manager of Calvin Klein. They knew exactly what the dress was. They had exactly one dress left. The value of the dress was 3 times the value of the dinner we were serving to Meyer and Zenia. We had a new dress at her apartment the next morning with a basket with wines and salami and a $500 gift certificate to come back. And a minimum, I think we minimized or at least neutralized her anger. We really hoped we would win over a future regular. I finally ran into this woman about 3 months ago. Retold the story. She said, "Oh, I've told everybody." All right. And I said, "Good, keep telling it because we need to get our money's worth out of that story somehow." Now I want to just talk about the power of no. When you say no to the right things, you are actually creating more opportunities to do more of the things that you're really, really good at. And this is perhaps the greatest lesson I think I've ever learned. So many times I say yes to something either because I don't know a nice way to say no, or I'm afraid of missing out on something. I've learned a great trick, especially when it comes to saying no to events. I remember a time when I first moved to New York, if I got an invitation to a party, it was like the greatest thing in the world. Well, today, the number of parties in New York and events our industry throws, etc., there's like 15 of them. You just can't do them. And so what I've now asked myself is this. It's always easy, by the way, to say yes when you see something that's 3 months away from now, because that's 3 months away from now. But ask yourself, am I doing this because I really want to do it? Am I doing it because I think I should do it? Do I think I'm doing it because I have to do it, but I know I don't really want to do it? And then I finally ask myself, don't think about that event being 3 months from now. That event is tonight. If that event is tonight, how do I feel? Do I feel like I'm really excited to go, or am I rolling my eyes going, what the heck did you say yes for? When a polite, quick no certainly would have done the trick at that point. I'm going to close with something that Seth Godin wrote many, many years ago. And some of you got to see Seth, who was at the last Welcome Conference in New York City. And he talks about no being one of the most essential tools we all have if we indeed care about the true yes. And the true yes for all of us is when we can actually bring to the world that thing or those things that no one does as well as we do. And it's an understanding that all the other yeses that we express unwittingly prevent us from sharing the true yeses that we should be sharing. And here's what Seth said. If you believe, as I do, that you must keep your promises and over-deliver always, and treat every commitment as though it's an opportunity for transformation, then the only way you can do this is to turn down most opportunities. No, I cannot meet with you. No, I cannot sell it to you for a lower price. No, I cannot do this job justice if I say yes. No, I cannot come to your party. No, I cannot help you. I'm really sorry, but I can't. That is not if I want to do the very things that people most value my work for. Please understand, as I'm trying to learn myself right now, that no is the most solid foundation upon which we can all build our truest yes. Thank you very, very much.